In January 1671, the richest city in the Americas was burning. 36 churches, 2 hospitals, thousands of homes. All of it turned to ash in a single night. The man who did this wasn't a general. He wasn't a king. He was a Welsh farm boy who couldn't even read. And instead of hanging him, England knighted him, gave him a title, and put him in charge of the very island he'd used as his base for a decade of terror. This is the story of Henry Morgan, the pirate so dangerous, the only way to stop him was to make him governor. Henry Morgan was born around 1635 in a village called Llanrumney in South Wales. And that's about all we know for certain about his early life. He never wrote about his childhood. No letters survive, no family records. For a man who would become the most famous pirate in the Western Hemisphere, his origin is almost entirely blank. What we do know is this. Sometime around 1655, Morgan appeared in the Caribbean. He was roughly 20 years old. How he got there is a question historians have argued about for centuries. The most likely explanation? He was part of Oliver Cromwell's Western Design, a massive military expedition to seize Spanish territories in the Caribbean. England wanted an empire. Cromwell sent 10,000 men to take it. They failed spectacularly. The attack on Hispaniola was a disaster. Thousands of English soldiers died, not in battle, but from dysentery, tropical disease, and sheer incompetence. But they did manage to capture one island, Jamaica. And Jamaica would become the most important piece of real estate in Morgan's life. Within a decade, Port Royal had transformed from a forgotten Spanish outpost into something the world had never seen before. A city built entirely on stolen money. Pirates, privateers, prostitutes, and merchants, all crammed onto a thin sand spit at the edge of Kingston Harbor. The rum flowed 24 hours a day. A single pirate crew could spend 3,000 pieces of 8 in a single night. This was Morgan's university, not books, not maps. The docks, the taverns, the back rooms where raids were planned over bottles of Kill Devil rum. By 1662, he was already leading small raiding parties along the coast of Central America. By 1665, he had command of his own ship. And by 1668, he was about to do something that would make the King of Spain personally demand his head. Portobello was one of the most heavily fortified cities in the Spanish Empire. It was the transit point. Every ounce of Peruvian silver, every bar of gold heading to Spain passed through this city. 3 stone forts guarded the harbor. The garrison was well armed and well supplied. No sane commander would attack it, certainly not with 400 men in canoes. Morgan didn't attack from the sea. He landed his men miles away and marched through the jungle in the dark. At dawn, they hit the first fort before the Spanish even knew they were there. But the second fort, Santiago Castle, was a problem. The walls were thick. The garrison was alert. A direct assault would cost Morgan half his men. So he did something that would haunt his reputation for the next 3.5 centuries. He gathered the nuns and priests from the local monastery, and he forced them to carry the scaling ladders to the walls. The Spanish defenders had a choice: fire on their own clergy, or let the pirates climb. They hesitated, and that hesitation was all Morgan needed. Portobello fell. Morgan held the city for 31 days, demanding a ransom of 350,000 pieces of 8. The governor of Panama sent a message: surrender or face the full might of the Spanish military. Morgan's reply was extraordinary. He sent the governor one of his pistols with a note: "I'll be coming to visit you next year. Please keep this as a memento." He wasn't joking. 9 months later, Morgan sailed for Lake Maracaibo, a massive inland lake connected to the Caribbean by a single narrow channel. It was a perfect hunting ground. Wealthy towns, minimal defense, and only one way in or out. The one way in or out part should have worried him. Morgan sacked the towns of Maracaibo and Gibraltar, stripped them clean over several weeks. But when he turned to leave, he found the exit blocked. 3 Spanish warships had sealed the channel. The largest, the Magdalene, carried 38 guns. Behind the ships, the fort at the channel entrance had been reinforced and rearmed. Morgan was trapped. His fleet of small sloops was no match for Spanish warships in open combat. He spent 4 days preparing his answer. Morgan took one of his captured ships and transformed it into a weapon. His men filled it with tar, brimstone, and gunpowder. They dressed logs in hats and coats and propped them at the railings. Scarecrow sailors. They cut holes in the hull so it would catch fire slowly from the inside out. At dawn, this ghost ship sailed directly at the Magdalene. The Magdalene went up like a torch. The second Spanish ship ran aground trying to escape. The third surrendered, but the fort still blocked the channel. Its guns could sink every ship in Morgan's fleet. So Morgan loaded his men into canoes in broad daylight, rowing toward the shore as if planning a land assault on the fort. The Spanish commander pulled his guns from the sea-facing walls and repositioned them to face the land. That night, the pirates quietly rowed back to their ships, and in the darkness, the entire fleet slipped through the undefended channel and out to open sea. The Spanish commander realized what had happened at dawn. By then, Morgan was already drinking rum in Port Royal, December 1670. Morgan assembled the largest pirate fleet the Caribbean had ever seen, 36 ships, nearly 2,000 men. English, French, Dutch, even former Spanish deserters. Every cutthroat in the Caribbean wanted a piece of what was coming. The target, Panama City, the Pacific capital of the Spanish Empire, the richest city in the New World. The problem, Panama City was on the Pacific side. To reach it, Morgan's army would have to cross the entire Isthmus of Panama. 70 miles of jungle, river, and mountain. They started up the Chagres River in canoes. When the river became too shallow, they walked. The march took 9 days. By the 5th day, they were starving. They ate leather bags, boiled and sliced. They ate their boots. One account claims they ate cats. On the 9th day, they emerged from the jungle and saw Panama City spread before them on the Pacific coast. The Spanish governor had prepared. He sent his cavalry first, along with a secret weapon. 2 herds of wild bulls, driven toward the pirate lines. It should have worked, but the animals panicked in the noise and confusion, and most of them stampeded sideways into the Spanish infantry. The battle lasted 2 hours. Morgan's Buccaneers, starving, exhausted, outnumbered, broke the Spanish lines completely. What happened next is the part that still haunts the histories. Panama City burned. Whether Morgan ordered the fires, or the Spanish governor torched his own city to deny it to the pirates, or the fires spread from the battle, no one knows for certain. Morgan himself always denied giving the order. What's undeniable is the scale of destruction, the entire city. Every building, every warehouse, every church was reduced to rubble. The stone ruins still stand today. They never rebuilt on the same site. Morgan's men spent 3 weeks picking through the ashes. They tortured prisoners to reveal hidden treasure. They committed atrocities that even Morgan's own surgeons later testified about. When they finally counted the loot, it came to roughly 400,000 pieces of eight. Split among 2,000 men, the share was disappointing. Many of the Buccaneers suspected Morgan had hidden the best of the treasure for himself. They weren't wrong to wonder, but none of them could prove it. And none of them were brave enough to confront him. There was just one problem with the sack of Panama. While Morgan had been marching through the jungle, England and Spain had signed a peace treaty, the Treaty of Madrid, ratified in July 1670, 5 months before Morgan attacked. Technically, he had committed an act of war against a nation England was no longer at war with. Spain was furious. The Spanish ambassador in London demanded blood. The diplomatic crisis threatened to undo years of negotiations. England needed a sacrifice, and there was really only one candidate. In April 1672, Morgan was arrested and shipped to London. His patron, Sir Thomas Modiford, the governor of Jamaica who had authorized every single one of Morgan's raids, was already in the Tower of London. Morgan should have hanged. He had burned the richest city in the Americas during peacetime. The evidence was overwhelming. The Spanish were demanding his execution. And then, something remarkable happened. Nothing. Morgan was never charged, never tried, never even formally imprisoned. Instead, he was treated as something between a prisoner and a celebrity. He attended parties. He consulted with admirals. He dined with members of parliament. The king himself, Charles AI, reportedly found Morgan fascinating. Why? Because England had a problem that only Henry Morgan could solve. Jamaica was vulnerable. The tiny island was surrounded by enemies. The Spanish hadn't given up hope of reclaiming it, and the French were expanding aggressively across the Caribbean. England needed Jamaica defended, but couldn't afford to send a proper fleet. For the past 15 years, the pirates had been Jamaica's defense force, free of charge. They kept the Spanish busy, they brought wealth to Port Royal, and they asked nothing from the crown except permission to keep raiding. But now there was a peace treaty. England couldn't officially support piracy anymore, so they needed someone who understood the pirates. Someone the Buccaneers respected and feared, to keep Jamaica safe without technically authorizing any more raids. In 1674, Henry Morgan was knighted by King Charles I, Sir Henry Morgan, and then he was appointed Lieutenant Governor of Jamaica. The pirate was now the law. One of his first official acts as Lieutenant Governor? Issuing arrest warrants for pirates. The men who had sailed with him, the men who had stormed Portobello by his side, the men who had crossed the isthmus and burned Panama. He hunted them down, tried them, and hanged them from the gallows in Port Royal Harbor. The irony is staggering. But Morgan didn't see it as betrayal. He saw it as the next logical move. He had been a pirate when piracy served England's interests. Now that it didn't, he would be the one to end it. Power suited Morgan poorly. As governor, he was competent but restless. He enforced English law, managed the plantation economy, and played the political games required of a colonial administrator. But the man who had crossed jungle and ocean with nothing but a cutlass and audacity found himself trapped behind a desk, signing papers. He drank, heavily, constantly. The same rum that had fueled his raids now consumed him. His body swelled, his skin yellowed. A physician who examined him in the late 1680s described a man barely recognizable from the terror of Panama. By 1688, Henry Morgan couldn't leave his bed. His liver had failed. Dropsy, what we now call cirrhosis, had filled his abdomen with fluid. On August 25th, 1688, he died. He was approximately 53 years old. His funeral was the largest Jamaica had ever seen. The guns of Port Royal fired a 22-cannon salute. Every ship in the harbor lowered its colors. An amnesty was declared. For one day, any pirate could enter Port Royal without fear of arrest to pay their respects. They buried him in the cemetery at Port Royal, overlooking the sea that had made him. 4 years later, at 11:43 in the morning on June 7th, 1692, the ground beneath Port Royal began to shake. The earthquake lasted 3 minutes, but it destroyed the city completely. The sand spit that Port Royal was built on liquefied. 2/3 of the city slid into the harbor. Buildings, streets, taverns, churches, warehouses, all of it sank beneath the Caribbean Sea. 2,000 people died in minutes, and somewhere in the wreckage, beneath 60 feet of water and sediment, lies the cemetery where Henry Morgan was buried. His grave has never been found. The sea swallowed it whole. Today, most people know the name Captain Morgan from the label on a bottle of spiced rum. The logo shows a man with one foot on a barrel, smiling, friendly, harmless. The real Henry Morgan burned cities. He used nuns as human shields. He tortured prisoners for gold. He drank himself to death in a mansion built on blood money. And when the sea finally came for what was left of him, it didn't even leave a headstone. The Pirates of the Caribbean weren't characters in a movie. They were men who did monstrous things. And sometimes, the monster wins, at least for a while.